Welcome back to College Town. I'm Kristen Ergel, and I'm joined by three guests today. We have Chris Smith, General Manager at Athlete Network, Terry Prentice, Deputy Athletic Director from Mississippi State, and Candace Dunback, Director of Strategic Growth and Customer Experience for Athlete Network. Thank you so much for all three of you for being on. You know, some of the hot topics talking right now is everyone has a need to raise more money, and there's so much pressure right now to engage more constituents, build stronger communities. There's so much going on, and you feel this firsthand right now as you live it at Mississippi State. We're really wanting to talk about how institutions are turning everyday engagement activities into measurable fundraising results. My first question is for you, Chris. When you talk with athletic departments across the country, what's some of the biggest challenges that you're hearing around engagement and fundraising today?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's no doubt this doesn't discriminate by any level. It affects the top Power Four all the way down to Division III and NAIA. I think at the end of the day, we all know the industry's been disrupted. Most of us realize that change is here, and we have to act on it. The biggest challenge comes from three primary areas. One, traditionally, athletics unintentionally has been very siloed. There's a lot of different silos between campus, athletics, and even sports teams. And then two, data is the key to everything right now. And especially when we talk about engagement and fundraising goals. And if you think about the nature of silos, that naturally is going to create difficult data because the data really needs to be living together. So as we look at the industry and the opportunities ahead of us, I think what we're hearing on our calls is we know we got to improve our data. We know we got to break down silos. The layer that's making it very difficult in the last couple of years is turnover. There's been a lot of transition and turnover. So when you take those three things, it's almost impossible to achieve engagement and fundraising goals without sitting back and having leaders like Terry who will come together and say, okay, we realize this. It's no one's fault, but to go and move forward, to move the needle forward, we got to bridge these three gaps in particular.
Now, how do you see athletic departments finding the time to create the processes necessary to move everyone in the right direction?
I think initially just setting the vision for the challenges that we have to tackle. I think that's number one thing, providing that vision to the doers on the staff. So the more vision that is provided from leadership to the doers, they're going to, once they know what that work, that body of work is, to go tackle, they're going to be able to do it more efficiently. I think I would start there. Having been someone who has been in that doer position, having that vision to understand where I'm going is really important. So I think that really that top-down leadership is really important right now.
You have definitely lived that at Kansas before and other places.
Yes.
Terry, from a leadership perspective, what happens when departments begin working with the same data, all on the same page, and start getting those engagement insights? What's that look like?
Well, I think you find collaboration. Collaboration's key when you start drawing those different individuals together from parts of the department. Kristen mentioned silos. Really, at Mississippi State, we really don't feel as though that's the case. So I'd start with collaboration. Feel like we've got me having an opportunity to talk about some of the key players. We've got the Bulldog Club, it's our development arm. Josh McCown's our deputy AD, oversees that group. But Allie Walker is really a key leader for us in that space. She collaborates well with Megan Hushire is our assistant AD for letterware engagement. That's a part of my team. So she's leading all programming and then anything that has to do with our connection back to our letter winners and former players. And then Gary Green's our senior director of the dog program within football. Really a strong leader for us on that side. Played for Mississippi State, had an NFL career, was able to come back to us 3 years ago to help lead our player development program. But really, really key connector to former players, from all generations, and done an incredible job. So when you think about that collaboration between those three buckets, most could look at them as silos. At Mississippi State, they're all teammates. And so feel as though collaboration is number one. Think once you have that collaboration, you can be better informed about the decisions that you can make. And then from there, hopefully lead to some great results. One, by engaging. And if we bring people either to campus or I'm able to share content with them or updates with them through Athlete Network platform, we can then lead to seeing some momentum on the fundraising front and revenue generation front as well. So I think those three key things are really important to us in Star Career.
And you're really humble. It's paying off for you guys, definitely. I'm sure you want to brag on some numbers, but some things that have really gone well for you. What results have you seen when it has been working together in unity?
I think we've seen a significant increase in the number of letter winners that we either bring back to campus or that have been engaged in our programming with student athletes. So think about our career networking nights. I'm thinking about our reunions for different sports. I'm thinking about our alumni baseball game that we hosted last fall that was a hit. We had 175 former baseball players and managers and staff come back to Starkville for an event. We had 10,000 people in Duty Noble Field, which is incredible, on a Friday night before a football game. But I think about those not happening alone and us having to have great collaboration able to do that. So there's a revenue component that's tied to that. But I just think through, all of those different touch points being successful. We've also seen a lift from an engagement with our career development program, as I had mentioned before. So we've got a career resource card that we've actually launched through Athlete Network's platform. That had over 6,000 engagements and impressions from our letter winners across the board. And so nice thing for us is that, Starkville is about 2 hours from major metropolitan area in terms of where our alumni are based. I think on average about 50% of our season ticket holders are driving from at least a 2-hour distance to reach us in Starkville. So the more we could do through the platform to be able to get things to people and then really take advantage of their time seeing us in person, I think is key. So those 6,000 engagements on that platform's incredible. Updating contact information's just as critical. And so launched something about 3 months ago, able to have over 3,000 different impressions and over 50 letter winners reach back out with new contact information, updated addresses. I think being able to sanitize that data and make sure that we're keeping that as accurate as possible does nothing but amplify our fundraisers and our RevGen team to be able to go out and know that they can meet people. So I think across the board, being able to use Athlete Network's platforms resulted in some pretty significant engagement. Really excited about some of the things we're going to roll out this fall. Really enjoyed being able to have the platform be customizable for us. We're thinking about key moments and big opportunities and wanting to seize on those. So I think a year ago back to our big win over Arizona State in football, week 2, it was big. We had a campaign that we had rolled out, having the football or some used footballs, but Coach Levy signed the winning play on the footballs, had a student athlete go ahead and add his signature to it. We're able to generate some dollars from that, but thinking about what that could mean this fall or in the winter or in the spring with our other sport programs, now that Athlete Network's really tapped into gravity and amped up their platform, I think there's some opportunity to generate some dollars there. And so that doesn't even have anything to do with our letter winners or former players, but just think across the board, there's ample opportunity for us.
A lot is happening in Starkville, a lot of excitement around it. You, Candace, have worked with dozens of athletic departments and spent the majority of your career in athletics yourself. What separates institutions that successfully create fundraising momentum outside the traditional avenues from those that maybe struggle in that lane?
Yeah, I think really tying fundraising to those emotional moments. Terry started to touch on a few of those things, but really bringing fundraising closer to those emotional moments to capitalize on those moments is important, along with understanding the actionable affinity for, in his case, the student athletes themselves. And I mean, you could say the same for any stakeholder group, but staying in the same vein with the former student athletes, the more that we get to know about our people, the more that we can understand how to ask them in the moment, aligned with their affinity to elevate those fundraising outcomes.
There's a lot of alumni and donors and fans and former athletes. How do you identify who is most likely to engage?
I'll jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So identifying those touch points that you're naturally putting into place, but even before that, understanding what led them to that affinity. Understanding student athletes, what awards did they win? Were they a captain of the team? Did they have leadership opportunities? Did they serve on SAC? Understanding those things about your athletes are going to give you a more clear picture on how to meet them where they are. And in terms of fundraising, honoring their own path to get there. And with that, supporting current student athletes or helping build out the current student athlete experience. If you do that through their affinity first, the outcomes get greater.
Okay, so you're talking about this term affinity. What does actionable affinity actually mean?
Yeah, who you are, what
Okay.
your relationship is with the institution.
Okay.
Why do you care about that institution? And that's the key. Like, that's the gold right there, is understanding that affinity. beyond, with former athletes, for example, beyond just the sport they played. So get deeper into that experience. What is the student athlete experience? I do think, just kind of a blanket statement, but generally in athletics, there's a huge opportunity for the external teams to better understand the internal operations, the actual student athlete experience, and like really get into the nitty gritty of that so that they can better package and sell that experience to former athletes and just regular donors, season ticket holders, like people who give back in other ways, meeting them where they are as well. So what is it that we're packaging and selling in the student athlete experience?
I'd say this too, as a practitioner and somebody that's living it on the ground, like something we've seen over the last 3 years, the nature of one-year transfers. Having a student athlete come to Mississippi State as either a fifth-year senior or a player that had some kind of a waiver, or just somebody that had transferred in for one final season. So case in point, I bring up Brennan Thompson. Brennan Thompson had been at University of Texas, had been at Oklahoma, decided to come to Mississippi State for his final year, had not had a ton of production in college for a variety of reasons, and came to Mississippi State, had a record-breaking year, best year we'd ever had from a single season standpoint in receiving yards. Did some incredible things. Ended up as a fourth-round draft pick by the Los Angeles Chargers. Well, I think Brennan Thompson would tell you, and we feel, he really, really made his home in Starkville. He, his wife, have come to love the community. It's come to love him back. The things that we've been able to do with him from a storytelling standpoint have been incredible. Well, that doesn't just happen. And I think 3 to 4 years ago, we would have thought about that student-athlete affinity really meaning 4 years of you being enrolled as a freshman, moving into the dorm, all the things that come with the college experience. Well, now we're talking about student athletes that are spending, a year on our campuses, or in some cases, even 6 months on our campuses. We think about the type of impact that we're able to have on those young people. If they do feel as though we benefited them, they get to call us home forever. And we have some incredible more affinity from that standpoint. So I think about a Brennan Thompson, just one example. I think there's countless others that we have. It's something that we're starting to lean into, and understanding we have to be even more intentional about how we engage with our student athletes.
It's that urgency, right? Like you've got, in terms of time boxing their experience and building that affinity, that actionable affinity that we were talking on, like you've really got to double down on what is it that we're providing, what is that student athlete experience. And it's an interesting time though, because when we're looking at budget cuts and things like that in student athlete development, you're seeing some minimization at some institutions in that area. So where there's this need to build long-term affinity, there's some operational things that, you have to have some really hard conversations and make some hard decisions are we supporting here and now, or the future, or both? And all of these things matter and influence that area.
It keeps you having a laser focus on your priorities. From a staffing perspective, though, anytime you think about using data, sometimes it feels like, man, our staffs are already spread thin as it is. Can you give an example of how, you're using the insights to create more personalized engagement, but it's not actually creating more work for the staffs?
Yeah, I think Terry went over how they have buckets, but I think he's underselling a little bit of how well they do it. The key is they have their foundation involved, they have their current student athlete team involved, they also have football and other sports involved, and they're all communicating together. So if you think about what do you do with this data, at Mississippi State, they reached out to their donors and former players asking how they want to get involved in the career space. People are getting tired of the same NIL story, right? And most of the time when you need updated data and information, most people are used to, well, they're just going to hit me with fundraising for that. But what Mississippi State's done, and under Terry's leadership, by everyone being connected, they have a strategy and roadmap. So their current athlete team, who's also involved, posted a card asking, how do you want to help support our current student athletes? Networking events, online, get them involved. It's so passionate to the audience. And then the follow-up question is, well, tell us what you're doing now. From that, they were able to uncover a former player that works at NASA, a couple of surgeons in town, and things of that nature. Because they're all talking together, not only does it help the current student athlete team, those data insights also help the development team. And then that helps football when they're having a recruit come in, talking and saying, hey, when you come to Mississippi State, we have this network all across America that, yes, we're going to help you try to go pro, but we have the data and the engagement to connect you to people based on your affinity who want to help you. All of that is engagement at the end of the day. And that engagement keeps people involved. It keeps people in the know. So when the ask comes, it hasn't been a year since the last golf tournament they got invited to. They're involved in the whole cycle. And, you know, we're fortunate to work with a lot of athletic departments. And I think one of the reasons that Terry's up here with us is they do it seamlessly. It's natural from the leadership to realize we can't create affinity if we're not all working together on this. And when you do, you start getting these outcomes.
I know storytelling plays a lot of part in this, obviously with that connection. Can you give an example of, you know, why that is so important, and how do we directly connect giving to a story?
I think the Washington example would be pretty relevant. So at University of Washington football, they had a gridiron event for former football players. And through some of our tools, our engagement tools, they were able to do some storytelling, but in the vein of past, present, future. So they were honoring the past by engaging the former athletes. They were talking about what they are trying to accomplish today. And then they also empowered the student athletes to have like their own moment to put their voice out there and be a part of bringing this family back together. So I think unique moments like that, and then throwing, you know, a fundraising opportunity on top of that, that meets a very broad audience where they are based off of their affinity. So, you know, earlier we were talking about bringing those giving moments closer geographically to those emotional moments. They hit it. They nailed it right on the head, and they accomplished the fundraising goal that they set out for themselves for that event.
And you're seeing this right now happening at Mississippi State.
We are. We really had quite a bit more engagement from a former student athlete standpoint in terms of just being around. Chris mentioned earlier, coming back to those career networking nights, coming back to the crawfish boil in the spring, receiving information about which student athletes are going on to succeed in their career fields and career paths, really does lead to affinity by some people. Had some gifts made by some former student athletes for our indoor practice facility project. Some of that data doesn't happen without the help of Athlete Network and having those platforms and having those connection tools. It's funny, as we talk to some of these individuals who've made, you know, high-level annual fund gifts, major gifts, things they continue to mention if they are a letter winner and somebody that's engaged in the Athlete Network platform, or some of the things that they've seen that have come across the platform, you know, over the course of time. So for us, we've seen quite a bit of success, and feel like we're just tip of the iceberg right now and have some more meat on the bone, so to speak.
And it's the follow-up to the events that the network allows them to do. So they created video content of their networking night and everything. And for so long without technology, the audience you're trying to engage, you hear about these events or you get included, but then you never hear anything again. And when you have the data and you have a communication mechanism, the follow-up's just as important, because that's what keeps them coming back. And so they're doing a really good job of not just promoting it, but then sharing the results, keeping people engaged in that way. There's a stat that's really troublesome, and it's 88% of people only give one time because they're never followed up with. And I don't think it's because people don't want to follow up with, it's just not easy sometimes. And when you have your data and your roadmap intact and it's consistent, it becomes a life cycle. And they're doing that very well. They're realizing, like, we have a lot of engagement. We have a lot of people who want to support us. If we consistently keep them involved throughout the process, they will just keep contributing. And that's different from always talking about NIL. At the end of the day, it's all going back to help grow the athletic department. But there's a different way to position it that doesn't fatigue that audience so much. And they're doing an exceptional job at that.
For those that are watching, they're in this industry, in this space right now. What are some of those simple ways departments can reduce donor friction? Just make it easier for supporters to act in the moment.
Yeah, reduce those clicks, you know. And again, you know, not to keep doubling down on this, but bring those giving opportunities, the operations of it, close to those emotional moments. You know, what typically happens is we'll have an event and then we'll follow up maybe the next week. We miss the moment. We're already behind the curve on that. So find ways to follow up softly in the moment during that event, and then within a day or two at most after that event. So really looking at your operations on some of these things. I think one of the biggest things that I talk about with our customers is that, you know, your next donor is already in your ecosystem. Are you engaging them? Do you have their contact information? You know, we have the privilege of working with many athletics departments, and you know, when we kick off a network, you know, we do a data cleanse. We do this whole project management on data, and inevitably, it's less than 30% of a database is actually good contact information. And then of that, when we're talking about events, when we send to that 30%, if we're only focused on in-person events, it's always less than 10% of that ask to the good contact information that can actually participate in your in-person moments. So that online engagement really is important. And you know, engagement beyond, I think it's important to have fan apps and things like that to keep people informed about what's going on. But engagement beyond that and based off of the affinity, just to kind of take it full circle.
If an athletic department wants to improve fundraising outcomes tomorrow, what do you think is the first step they should take right now?
Realize the times have changed and we can do things differently. Technology has advanced. We no longer have to look at fundraising as an annual deal. We can enable a lot of staff and supporters to become fundraisers, and we can fundraise on events and campaigns almost daily. You know, it's a double-edged sword. We're very data heavy at Athlete Network. We really harp on data, and when you do that, you can look at those records and forget they're humans. But at the end of the day, people just want to feel a part of something. And for too long, because we didn't have the technology in the space or maybe the workflow or process, we waited till once a year. And that doesn't create stickiness and engagement. If we want to move today, we need to, in athletics, realize there's new opportunities and workflows that are different from the old ways, but can have meaningful impacts, move the needle significantly today by enabling others who at one point we may have not really thought of as being a fundraiser. You know, I'm a former student athlete. When I played, it was so restrictive. And now it's not. You can leverage your athletes, you can leverage your coaches, you can leverage your staff like Terry to get involved. And good tech allows that to happen, and the outcomes can start coming right now.
Terry, final thoughts for you?
I do think in this day and age, technology is obviously key to being able to leverage any type of outcome. And for us in Mississippi State, like I had said before, we're 2 hours from most of our donor populations and donor bases. So the more that we can engage on a platform, the more we can regularly send and share information about what our current student athletes are doing and keep people informed. Candace had mentioned our career networking nights or other events that we've had. We try to follow up within a day. I think the more we can engage in a quick and timely manner, you're going to be better for it and bring better outcomes. It's all about communication, just communicating.
Final thoughts from you?
Your next donor is right there in front of you. So give them a reason through engagement to raise their hand and say, I want to support.
Thank you all so much for your time and insight. We really appreciate it in a college town.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.